Hello, welcome back to Speaking Queerly, a podcast hosted by Kaleidoscope Youth Center, an LGBT youth center located in Columbus, Ohio. My name is Mallory, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Civic Engagement and Advocacy Manager here at KYC.
And I'm Daria, I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the Ohio GSA Network Manager at Kaleidoscope.
Awesome. Well, we hope everyone has been doing well since our last episode. I know that last episode was a little bit heavy. We talked a lot about the legislation, the anti-LGBT legislation that's been introduced here in Ohio. And I just wanted us to kind of debrief a little bit. I know that can be a little bit heavy, as can the rest of the news that's happening.
Absolutely.
So I just want to remind everyone that, yes, we want to care about these issues. It's important to stay informed, but it's also okay to, turn off the news every once in a while and to just, take time for yourself and to just kind of recharge too.
Right. And I will say, making sure that you hold space in your life for that. There's a lot of young people that come to KYC, and we have things like an advocacy meeting, and youth are more than welcome to come volunteer their time and hang out with us for that. But also we've got a lot of youth that just want to come and be queer and sit here and not have to worry about what's happening in the news and happening outside. So just having a space that you can exist authentically is really important.
100%. And I think one thing that it's important for everyone to remember is that, yes, you should care, and yes, you should take action, contact your legislators, things like that. And also, it's okay sometimes to let other people worry about that too, especially if you're a young person. It's great to be involved, and also, you can let adults handle that too, and you can just be a kid, or you can just be a young person too. So,
Right.
I just want to make sure we cleared that up, because I know last episode was kind of heavy.
Yeah, it was a lot, but yeah. Thanks for saying that, Mel.
Yeah, of course. Well, I know that today's episode, the guest we have here is going to be an excellent palate cleanser for those who are feeling a little bit weighed down after the last episode, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Luster. Earlier this year, we talked with our colleague Lisanne Ball about some Black and queer folks who we either wish we had learned more about growing up, or who made an impact on us when we learned about them in school or just in our own readings. And I think when we talk about these leaders, or really any other important figures in the world, it's often hard to picture ourselves making the same sort of impact in the world. So we wanted to bring it local today and introduce everyone to a person who has and continues to leave a mark on Columbus's Black and queer community. And this is Luster P. Singleton.
Hello.
Hi, Luster. Luster, who uses he and they pronouns, is proudly from Zanesville, Ohio, and is a graduate of The Ohio State University, where they earned a master's and bachelor's of arts degrees in women's studies. He's fascinated by the intersections of isms and how they inform and instruct positive perceptions of faith and gender in our daily lives. Luster is a former coordinator of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender student services and a director of ethnic student services at Ohio State. They also coordinated the Pride Family and Teen Area for Stonewall Columbus yearly Pride Festival for 14 years. Luster also has a 30-year reputation as an accomplished gender performer, best known for their gender-bending portrayals of the sassy Lustivious Dela Virgion and the sassy Luster Dela V. They're the co-founder and visionary of the 1990s nationally and internationally acclaimed drag king troupe, H.I.S, Kings, and the International Drag King Extravaganza.
You have to say that, extravaganza.
Extravaganza, yes, of course. They've also been featured in several documentary films and have toured with theater productions, but none of which compare to the fact that they're now here with us on Speaking Queerly. So,
hey, I made it.
And importantly, we want to shout out, Luster was also the 2022 KYC Community Freedom Fighter Award honoree. So
thank you all.
Bring
Thank
it
you
local
for that.
here. Yeah, of course. So, as you can tell, Luster is just this phenomenal human, and we're so excited to have you here on the podcast. So welcome.
I've been doing a few things.
Staying busy and making time for little old us here at Speaking Queerly.
Well, KYC is actually a passion, and really, in my mind, why I do the things I do. The folks that you serve, the population that's served here, and what you provide it's really why I ever stepped out the first time on a Pride March, why I sweat bullets and then come do things like this. I'm actually a fairly introverted I am an extroverted introvert, really. But what you do here is give people a voice way sooner than society would tell them that they can have a voice. And that is important to me because I spent a lot of time. I don't even know I wonder what I would be sometimes when I think about if I'd had an opportunity like this to get somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I meet the youth and the young people and the kids that come here and the staff even, and just am amazed by what's provided. And so I'm always going to say yes to this. I mean, I was out there in the early days when this was just a pipe dream of people, and I licked envelopes, stuffed letters. That was back in the day, folks, when you took a piece of paper and you typed stuff up on it, you put it inside this envelope, and then you put a stamp on it.
Whoa.
And if you were like really progressive, you'd put an empty envelope, stamped envelope inside so they could reply to you, right? And so those days at Columbus Stonewall, sitting there, actually, I think we might have even been in someone's home, looking these letters and getting them out, this information out for this radical idea of a support group, really, for youth, you know, was something else. And now here we are. You know, we could only dream of this then, and now here we are.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about like KYC history too. And it's, I'm sure like when you were in those early days too, like would you have pictured KYC being what it is now and having the reach? Or
the thing is that my gift, I guess you could say, that I've been leaning into is that I am a visionary. And so when I get an idea, I go all the way. Like I'll walk through the whole thing of what. And we've always known that a safe house, housing, those types of things were needed. So yeah, that's what I thought. I just did not think it would take as long as it has taken. You know, for the most part, folks like to make a lot of fun about Ohio, but along queer lines, we are actually very progressive here, very progressive. And there is a comfort and I don't know, I feel like a legislative power that we have here that does not exist outside of the state. If you just take your time and drive across, you'll find that you will not find, we feel like we don't have that much here because we're spoiled really, or blessed, however you want to look at it. And so, you know, just for us to have that idea then to have queer adults really helping queer youth and people being able to say that they were, well, gay and lesbian, and I'll say gay and lesbian, not even the bisexuals were saying that much at that time, to say that we recognized gay and lesbian youth under 18 was extremely radical. So there was of course, if we were doing that, I thought, 5 years, 10 years maybe, we're going to have a couple houses, you know, we're really going to have like a whole, I expected us to have a whole like youth lobbyist group and just all of these types of things, but
we're getting
there. We're getting there. We are getting there. And, you know, it's always a practice it looks so easy when we're looking at the social movements of the past. It looks like, I just got to get out here in the street and I got to do this and I got to do that. But you miss out on all the things behind the scenes that have to come together. All the people that you don't think are connected. You know, like society will have you thinking that you're a conspiracist or something because you don't think that they're like, those aren't connected, but they are connected. The education board there are all these traps that are set up so that you cannot progress, you know, and it's not as easy as just hating the establishment. You do have to participate and have people that are a part of the establishment, and it's a lot finer of a line to walk than one might imagine
Right.
when they're passionate 30 years ago or whatever it was.
Right. Wow. Well, I'm so eager to hear more about your stories, your involvements, your place in the Columbus queer community. But first, we want to start off with a little bit of a fun, optional add-on question,
Okay.
as we say in our drop-in center. So today we're going to be talking a lot about storytelling, and so I want to know, what is your favorite book or movie or TV show, musician, any piece of media that prominently features a Black queer character or queer characters of color?
Now?
It could be from any time, yeah.
Okay. Well, then I would say Sylvester.
Okay.
And for those people who don't, this is a little bit of your trans, well, we'll say non-binary. Sylvester is a musician, singer, songwriter, back in the, I guess 70s. He might have even started in the 60s, but was this performer, what's it called? Something Girls, Dream Girls.
Oh,
so the
yeah.
soundtrack to Dream Girls is Sylvester's music.
Neat.
Okay, so the soundtrack to that, a lot of disco that you hear, it was Sylvester. He's like that crossover. We start getting to some electronic after disco, right? And so he kind of is at the beginning of disco into electronic music, but was it a queen from no age, very unapologetic about it, has an octave range that is unbelievable. There are so many songs that sample from Sylvester's music. It's Raining Men, those singers, when they sang with him, they were 2 tons of fun. I can't remember. The Weather Girls.
Yep.
The Weather Girls were his backup singers.
Wow.
And I think he actually wrote the music. I know he produced them, but he was part of, they're called, I should have brought something to jog my memory. But he is part of a traveling, they were a trans group. I'll have to give you the name. I'll try and pull the name up later. But they went around and were doing gender bending when people weren't calling it that. They just seemed to be outrageous. You know, and Sylvester always had the long nails, and he was really actually a non-binary, but we did not have that word then. People would refer to him as a transvestite. He did not call himself that. He said that he was a queen, and he actually got on like national talk TV. Like it wasn't Johnny Carson. But I cannot remember. It was something like Johnny Carson, but he went on there as himself.
Cool.
And while folks tried to poke fun, he held his own until like the whole audience was leaning in and listening to him say how before RuPaul there was Sylvester.
Oh, I love that.
So before RuPaul, there was Sylvester. And so and he always worked in stories about who he was and how he felt people should be within his music. He always gave messages, throughout his concerts and wherever he was. So he actually passed away from complications of HIV. But prior to that, he's just an icon. He's just style, sound, whatever it was Sylvester.
That's awesome.
That is amazing.
That's really
There's
cool.
so much I need to dig into.
I know.
Yeah,
there's a musical out about his life. I believe that there's a couple books out about his life. That was during Haight-Ashbury time, so Oakland was just exploding with musicality and just people pushing the edges of gender boundaries. So
That's cool.
I love that.
yeah.
So Daria, how about you?
I'm going to continue on the music side of things.
Okay.
I think, at least right now, Jaden Smith. I love Jaden Smith. He has his own clothing line as well, which is just super cool.
I didn't know that.
I
Yeah.
will never, on this nonprofit budget, I'm never going to be able to afford
Right,
clothing
exactly.
things. But super, super great. I love just the way that he is so unapologetically himself, and the way that he dresses and the way that he interacts with the world. And I can't remember what year it was exactly, but there was some huge controversy that blew up at the fact that Jaden Smith wore a skirt. It was insane. People specifically went to Will Smith and were like, how could you let your son dress that way? And so much of it was specifically because Jaden Smith identifies as a black man. And when Harry Styles comes out and wears dresses and and you know, dresses in whatever way that he wants
He's
to.
metrosexual.
Yeah, everyone is like, okay, that's great. And of course, you know, there's going to be backlash in general, but overall, a lot of people are like, that's so awesome that Harry Styles is doing that. But then when Jaden Smith did it, and just not even in the public eye per se, I believe it was for a school prom or something like that. People were just going off the deep end, but he stood his own and continues on and is doing his own clothing brand and releasing music. I want to see him live so bad, but he was touring with Justin Bieber, and I'm not a big Justin Bieber fan, so I couldn't convince myself to spend the money to just go see Jaden Smith for 40 minutes and then sit through a 2-hour Justin Bieber concert.
Right.
So.
Well, we need Jaden Smith on the cover of Vogue then, too, if Harry Styles can do it. Yeah, let's see Jaden Smith on there.
Yeah, let's see Jaden Smith on the cover of it.
I'd love that.
You heard it here first, folks.
Right.
I know, right?
Yeah, I hope it happens.
If Luster said it, it's going to happen.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, I think real quick, the storyline, the TV show really that I've been obsessed with basically for the last 6 months or more is the new A League of Their Own series on Amazon Prime. This show, if you watch the original 1992 movie, this show delves into all of the storylines that weren't being told. Everybody is gay. Just when you think that you've seen enough gay characters, there are more. Just the all 6 episodes.
Really?
8 episodes. And I think they're maybe being renewed for more, but not nearly as much as they should. But I'll save that for another day.
I'm going to have to check that out.
But not only are there so many queer characters, there's a whole plot line. You know how in the original movie, it's just you very briefly see these black women who want to play but can't play, and they catch the ball, whatever, and that's the end of that plot line. This goes into those black and queer characters, and there's black trans representation, just the character Max, and I don't want to give any spoilers, I really don't, but her relationship with her family, the way that that's done out, oh my gosh, I could cry right now just thinking about it. If you have not seen that show on Amazon Prime, that's your required homework, is to go home and binge all 8 episodes, and episode 6.
I was being a hater.
No, it's I know a lot of people were like, oh, I don't want to watch it because either they had such a strong relationship with the 92 film, or they didn't like the film and didn't want to see it redone as a TV show, but couldn't have been done better. Truly is just, I struggle to find a flaw, honestly. I wanted to find a flaw just to be oh, they didn't do it perfectly, but I don't know. Call me out if you catch a flaw, but I don't know.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, you definitely should. But yeah, the representation is honestly oh, I could cry. It's great. it's the show I think everyone needed when they were a kid. So speaking of when you were a kid, and you kind of touched on this too, KYC serves youth between the ages of 12 and 24 in various ways. And I want to know a little bit about yourself when you were around that age. And I know 12 to 24 is a big age range, so you could pick a time when you were a young person and just kind of tell us about who young Luster was.
Well, I pretty much figured out kind of what was up. I just didn't totally have great language for it when I was 8. I really believe when I was 3 or 4, I knew, but no one's trying to listen to you when you're that age, you know. I can remember having really strong reactions to, I didn't mind dressing up and dresses and things like that at home. But when I went out, I did not want to be wearing that stuff. And, you know, the fact that I'm kind of a queer's queer, like I really decidingly in the middle. It's taken me a long time to really, you know, I'm also a stage performer. And so a lot of my, I guess, femininity would come out there. But it's taken me a long time to accept what kind of pretty boy I really am. And to really find this, like, thank God for, was it the millennials or is it what generation coins non-binary?
Yeah.
Thank God for that, because I really am decidedly in the middle. And so I could play around with that femininity to a point. But as soon as I would like get home, I would like have to. I had this ball cap that I wore all the time. It was a knit. It was a knit kind of ball cap, but it had a big cap part to it. And it was red and white stripes, but the bill was stars. Because I am a patriot. We'll talk about that later, but I am patriotic, and I just would wear that, and I had a denim blue hat. And those, no matter what I had on, I would try to put those caps on, drive my mom crazy, but I would try to put those caps on, and somehow that like would help me, you know? But around 11 and 12, it was pretty traumatic because I had always, you know, played with the guys. I want to play shoot 'em up, be the captain of the starship, all of that stuff, leading the commando things. That was what I wanted to do. And it came naturally to me, and I did do that. Around 11 or 12, not only are my playmates pushing back, you know, because I guess we're all going through puberty suddenly. I'm not, even though I was as flat-chested as them, it's still becoming more of a point for some of them that I'm not a guy. You know, I'm not a guy. So there's, you know, touching that like inappropriate grabs and touches that start to happen, you know, which whatever is normal. People are trying to figure things out. And I'm like, I don't like that. And no, I don't like him like that. That's disgusting to me. Kind of it was. Like, that was like the weird thing too, because I really liked guys, but I think it's because I saw myself as their equal in some way. I've never like thought, oh, I want to be a boy. I'm going to be a boy. I'm a dude. I'm a guy, and I just knew that. And everybody's body's different, right? Like I was having this confusion then because I'm like, everybody's body's different, so mine's just like different. But I'm still like with you guys. And then adults are starting to be the fact that I was a tom girl was always I happen to be super bright. So if you're super bright as a girl and you're mannish, is which people would say, people will put up with that because you're intelligent. It's almost like you can't be super intelligent and be beautiful. Folks don't accept that, really, right? You're pushed towards not being intelligent. It's almost like, oh my God, she's so beautiful and she's intelligent, you know? But as a homely or mannish female, intelligence is what's going to get you by, because at least you're smart. You know? And so, but around that age, you start getting this push to, you know, well, that was cute, but you know, you're about to be 13. You're about to be a teenager. You can't be in the streets rolling in the dirt and doing all that stuff. You start hearing those, and it's not, I don't think no one came up and said, oh, you're a girl, you cannot. But it's in the comments. It's in everything that you see. It's in the stores. Like, the older you get, the closer away boys and girls' clothes are from each other.
Right.
You know? Like, you'll have mixed up stuff as long as it's like elementary and under.
Like the kids section.
The kids section, like everything's there.
You're right.
But then you suddenly, you like get pushed to, you get split apart, right? And dressing rooms have to like, I don't know why people can't just go in the dressing room and try their stuff on. There's an attendant there. You know, nothing's going to happen in there that you don't allow to happen.
Right.
And so, like, there's just starts becoming all that pressure. And I am looking for myself somewhere, but any of the mannish women are, you can see the disgust of the adults around you, or the sort of putting up with, but that's not something that you're going to be about. And so I don't know, I turned into a bookworm.
Yeah.
And I just called myself conservative, even though I really like fashion a lot. And the way it would work out for me is I could do this high femme thing, like, okay, it's basketball game, you got to get dressed up on game day. So I would bust out with that. Some, mainly just because people would be like, what?
Yeah, they didn't expect.
You know, because they didn't expect it. I had this purple number with the choker. And these fishnet hose, oh, you couldn't tell me a thing. But it much played into my later life of being a drag queen, because I could put on that femininity, and I got a kick out of people enjoying how well I did it.
Yeah.
You know, what I didn't get a kick out of was that they wanted me to be like that all the time, and that they couldn't see that that wasn't exactly what I was trying to say. You know, so it starts to happen there. My best friend really started getting into boys and everything feminine, and so it started turning into me, like, just sitting there and watching her go through all of this stuff. And at the same time, I think I may have had a crush, sort of, on her, only to access it. I wanted females, girls, to treat me how they were treating those guys.
Right, right.
You know? And I wanted guys, I like guy energy, but I wanted them to treat me like the bud.
Right.
You know, or I guess I was aware of a couple gay male couples, and I can remember thinking, if I had something like that, if I could have a guy treat me like that guy treats that guy, you know, maybe I could do that. And then I immediately felt guilty and terrible, and like maybe I needed to pray or something, because, you know, I'm having like the thoughts that you have when you're that age, and you're not allowed to talk about them.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to tell, and you're like, I don't know, something's happening in my nether regions every time that person walks by me, and who do I talk to about that?
Right.
You know?
Because it's awkward enough when you're like at that age, and like inevitably some adult, whether that's your parent or whatever, is gonna be like, who do you have a crush on? Or like you're talking to somebody, you're literally just having a conversation, you're like, oh, is that your boyfriend?
Yeah.
And then when it's assumed like a cis-het situation, it's like awkward enough as is. And then when you're like, oh wait, something's going on, I'm different. Like, you're not going to bring that up to, you know, just a parent.
And then especially if you're talking about like the nuances of it when it comes to like gender identity and like sexual orientation, when it's like, so I think if I like guys, it would be in the way that like this gay man is treating like his partner, and it's like that kind of dynamic. Or if I like girls, it's like this kind of dynamic that I want. Like, if you're 12, are you going to explain that to like your parents or your guardians or whatever? Like, it's like, you know what, we will deal with that in a while. Like, I don't want to talk to you about that.
And just, it's so confusing because you are pushed. Well, and if you are a child of questionable sexual orientation, there is more pressure when people see that and they're like, oh, go. If that's your boyfriend, right? Oh, do you want to invite so-and-so? Do you want to do this? And it's like, but if that were going on, because I could compare to my sister who is getting the don't be so fast, don't be so fresh, because she is model-esque and never had a problem with anybody at the door, knocking at the door. So she's getting the opposite of don't be so fast, don't be this, don't be that. And so it's like confusing because I thought you were supposed to build a relationship. I thought you were supposed to be friends and not be thinking about all of that. Why are you all, did you get your first kiss yet? No. You know? I'm just like trying to get comfortable riding in the same cart on on the like at the amusement park. I'm just like, I'm just like trying to like be in the same car on a ride, and you're like, oh, did you get your first kiss yet?
Right.
You know?
I'm just trying to make eye contact without sweating. Yeah, let alone physical contact. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so, it was kind of strange. I turned into the friend. Now, if it were for me, I couldn't talk to a person. But like if it were you two and I knew like you were crushed out on her, I could make some situations happen.
You'd be like the wing person.
So I was always like the wing person. I almost always was by myself. And then there were a bunch of couples and I would be by myself. I could not figure out how to, I don't know. I think part of it was because I also felt like a fraud of sorts because I knew I don't want to go out with you. But, and so while you're trying to do that, it's just like, I don't want to do this. And then you feel obligated if someone's nice to you, then to like, they'd be like, why are you being so mean? Go out, go do something. And you're like, no.
Right.
I have to.
I distinctly remember getting the same comments from my mom, like, why are you being so mean to him? Just like, whatever. I was like, but like meanness was not that I was ever mean, you know what I mean? But not like open arms, friendly, like welcome you into my life because I'm like, I don't want that, but I also don't have the words for why I don't want that. She's like, just be nice to him, Mallory. Oh, whatever. I'm like, Like I remember like there was one day after like a swim meet or something, I was wearing just my sweats. And my mom was like, well, because I had a boy coming over or whatever. She was like, why don't you like put on jeans, put on something nicer? And I was like, absolutely not. Like I don't want him to get any wrong ideas.
Right.
But I didn't know what that was, right? Yeah. So
right.
I relate fully, yeah.
Yeah, it was right on up until, I don't know, because the lesbian world, which I started to so I started working at a Girl Scout camp.
Oh.
How cliche. When I was like 15 or something. We sort of fudged about my age so that I think that my counselor could see what was going on, and I was really miserable. I've always been pretty precocious and older for my age, and I don't know. Like I think she must have saw something, and she finagled a way for me to come and work at this camp. And in the kitchen of this camp, and when I got there of course were lesbians, like out as you can be. And so I started kind of hanging around them because at least they're not the girly girls. Like they're not the girly girls. They're helping me sort of figure out how I can walk in the world, And they were all like people in college or like in the beginnings of their career. So that also like gave some insight for how I might be able to manage. I really thought that I would be a school teacher. I was going to marry like a trucker or something like that. Somebody who was gone all the time because I wanted children. So I was like, I can do this to get some children and then he'll be gone all the time. And I'm going to be like a new age kind of wife where we'll have an open, like that I read in some swinger thing. And I know we'll be swingers and I'll let him do all of that.
I'm obsessed with
And
you.
That's what I had in my mind. I would sit in church and think about it and think about how I was going to manage this and be able, or be a teacher because it did seem a lot of teachers were single and you didn't know anything about their lives, And so I thought that is a profession you can do and not be married because you could just be married to other people's children and the work and all of that stuff. And so that's really what I thought.
Right.
That I was going to do, or I was going to like run away and thumb my way to California or something and California, or I was going to go to the mountains and just live like a hermit because I did not.
Right.
Those were the options that I thought I had.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually a good place, moving from like your youth into like the adolescence of like where you thought you were going, moving to like how do you see yourself in Columbus, you know, and like in the legacy that you leave, like moving from that youth side of things into like your careers and your adulthood.
I'm often so surprised that I'm here, as well as it makes sense. I really was trying to get the hell out of Ohio.
Yeah.
Like I come from Zanesville. Zanesville's a really interesting place. It's the confluence of a lot of things, you know. We had a lot of Slavic people there because Slavic folks were treated poorly in that too, and worked the rivers a lot. So we got a lot of Slavic folks, a lot of indigenous folks, and then African American people. So the fabric there is extremely interesting, but the racism that happens in Zanesville was just like a part of everyday life. You know, I mean, the Grand Imperial Wizard of one of the sections of the Ku Klux Klan proudly lived with a big sign on his house, you know, right on the outskirts of town. There's a house to this day that still sits there, proudly displaying its swastika flags and Aryan Nation right across from our park. You know, everybody knew their place, and you didn't want to complicate it by being a queer. You know, so I knew, and I just thought bigger. I just wanted more, you know, and I just thought I would like get out of here. But I always did sort of have this idea of being a Pied Piper of sorts. I love the Pied Piper story. And so I would be like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this stuff. And then I'm going to come back here. I'm going to buy the rec center. And that's what I'm going to do. You know, that's how I'm going to like help people know that they could do more. Well, it didn't exactly work out that way, but I think that I'm here because I do love Ohio. I am proud of who we are and what we do and what we mean to the rest of the nation and the world. I have always had this sense, maybe just coming from Zanesville and being from the country, you know, you get a lot of flack for that. And so I've always had like this fierce sense of, what? That's right, I am for Zanesville, so what, you know? And like, it was really important for me to like know things about the world and be able to talk about the world and be able to, when I first decided, I guess, to come into the work that I do, and I just really see myself as this beacon. And I try to provide what I'd wish for myself, you know, to have, like, there were gay people there, but they were closeted for good reasons, but still, you know, I wanted to provide for people a narrative that wasn't one that ended in tragedy or just death or, yes, I was who I was, but my life was so miserable because of that. You know, I really wanted to help people in their voice and to voice who they are and like what's possible. So when I finally get up here, I was headed to Stanford. That's where I thought that I was going to go. And that did not work out. And I ended up devastated at Ohio State.
Yeah, don't people hear you say that on the spot?
Whatever.
Yeah.
I have 2 degrees and okay, but I was devastated because I was afraid I would be trapped. You know, I was afraid I would be trapped, and just all of these things. I had so much going on at that time in my life. I mean, I was also when I started college, I was 6 months pregnant when I started college. And so I had that going on, and what did that mean? And I already knew myself as a queer person, and it was a lot of pressure that ended me up in that situation. And I still came to Ohio State and lived in the towers with my big old pregnant self. I sure did. That first day, I just was told my roommates, well, you can obviously see what my situation is. If this makes you uncomfortable, they will give me my own room.
Wow.
And luckily, the women there were like, it could be one of us. And wow, we cannot even believe that you're... And so, you know, what a mind thing that was to be. I knew I was queer. I was saying I was a lesbian politically.
Right.
I was saying that. And I had not had any kind of relationship with a female person. Mm-hmm. A person who identified as feminine or female. But I knew that was something that I was really interested in. Mm-hmm. But I still couldn't figure out how to access it too. Because where's the room for a masculine female in lesbian community and culture? Mm-hmm. Butch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not that. So it was just like so crazy. But all of those experiences so that I could, I guess, share that now. But I get there, gave my kid up for adoption. Yes, we're back together now. Yes, we know each other and all of that. And so then I just was like, okay, so what affords me is this lesbian thing, because it was only trans white women that I knew, and they were dealing with all of their socialization as white men and just really caught up on the binary of gender. Yeah. You know? And so that wasn't a place for me. So I land with the lesbians who at least, and I'm in women's studies, I find women's studies. Sure. It would be hard to avoid connecting with I was in education, and I could see that wasn't going to work well for me. Yeah. And there was just this dyke who was my counselor. Her name is Dottie Painter. If you don't know about her here in Columbus, you should know about her. I will say specifically, lesbians, get on your history. Dottie Painter was fierce. She just passed, I think, in this last couple years. Fierce, fierce, fierce. And I credit her for saying, well, you know, have you ever heard of women's studies? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Women study. Right. What is that? Yeah. Sounds interesting. Right. And that's how I get there. And she got me a job in student gender and sexuality services. Wow. She got me a job there. And so those things, I start reading more and this is the stuff I'm trying to access, you know? Mm-hmm. You know, and I'd always sort of like tried to find anything that I could find. And, you know, we're just getting the internet, so you're getting some access to I think it was called like Tapestry. And so there were folks on the East Coast who were writing like rag magazines and posting up like these newsletter things that you could get access to. I just always like would look, you know, I was fascinated. Any type of cross-dressing that went on, I would be studying that and be looking for, like, I'm like, that's not me. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I wonder about that person. They do that character really well. You know, just any kind of anything that I could find with folks acting otherly is what I would try to do. And, you know, the third wave of feminism starts peaking up and starts saying to lesbians, yeah, but you're saying we can only be this type of lesbian. And there's that pushback that starts to happen there. The bisexuals are like, hey, stop ignoring us, you know? And so I could see some room in there, but I'm not a swinger. You know, like a lot of times bisexual then supposedly meant swinger. And that's a whole dynamic from where and when I entered there that was very heteronormative. Yeah. You know, and so that would not fit. And it's just kind of like this journey of me bouncing this way. I don't start having a claiming a transgender identity until mid-90s. Like I would just say I'm a lesbian politically. I had relationships with cisgendered women, occasional, what do I call it, stranger relationships with cisgendered men, like in between or something like that. But still it's all like not quite feeling, I would sort of avoid the question of how do you identify.
Right.
I would just make a joke or somehow avoid that question, because to say any one thing was to then lock oneself in.
Right. That's what I was going to say is like, I mean, anytime, like I know like from my own personal experience, and I know that is just like an ongoing feeling for many queer and trans folks, is like asking how you identify or when you come out, like that feels very definitive. I was worried about coming out for the longest time because I was like, well, if I say this one thing, then that is who I am, and then I can't deviate from that, because it felt like enough of a deviation to come out as queer in any capacity, because it's like, well, I've only known myself as straight, so then to come out, it's like, okay, that's changing an identity that I've always held, you know what I mean? But it has to be right, it has to be the exact thing, you know? Because otherwise, but realizing that it can ebb and flow, and like you can identify as one thing 1 minute and something else, you know what I mean, to live in between that binary in whatever way that binary exists is something that's hard to wrap your head around, because you're supposed to know, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What is your name? Like all these things that are truths or like goals that you're trying to move toward, and then to like queer that is it's really just society trying to control you, and it takes a lot to unlearn that or to stand up against it. Everyone's waiting for someone else to be like, no, I don't want to be that way, so that it gives them room, but to be that person that's like, yeah, this just does not work for me. And then it's like, ooh, what's wrong with you? It's like, well, who knows? Like the temperature might be different. That changes things, Maybe like I'm just not feeling like that today, and why isn't that okay? I don't understand exactly. I can remember, so I don't emerge as my masculine of center, non-binary self. I don't emerge really. I would say it was all pretty much in a theory in some way until like 5 years ago. Because I just couldn't get with the binary. To be identify as a trans man, then the way that people would want to interact and do that, like I just didn't even want to deal with it before then. And so I just really I just felt like an anomaly, out there. And people just kind of, I was married. I was in a relationship for 21 years, married for 17 of those, and constantly having to sort of, if I chose to, say to people, no, I'm not the man in this marriage. I am not my wife. I'm actually pretty domestic. Like I will do the laundry and I'll do all of that. Like I don't mind to do all that. I can go out there and work on the car too and lay the fence. All of that to me is domestic, taking. Like all that to me is domestic. And so, I'd prefer to stay home and not go anywhere and do all of that. Like I like the vacation and that, but I do that. You go out there. And so, just having to deal with people when I stayed home with our kids, like people like, really? What do you like? That surprises me. Really? Because Erin, she is not like that. That's not her thing. Do you know us at all? Because it wouldn't be that way. Right.
It was really strange. And then when I did decide, okay, I'm going to take the shot and I'm going to do the surgery, the reaction from the community, the reaction always from queered people, what I call queer people. My great-grandmother used the word queer to mean anything that she thought was curious enough for inquiry. She'd be like, oh, that is so queer. That's how she used that word. So that's how I use that word, because I think that we're interesting and deserve inquiry, and that it's more, it's curious. Oh, that's curious. And that curiosity isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing, you know? And so when I decide to do all of this emerging and that, even from the very beginning, there is this, what do you call it, gatekeeping that happens in these communities that are, I'm like, lesbians, you were the ones who said that gender was this constructed thing, and that we didn't have to, being a woman didn't mean that. So now, suddenly, I've actually had a lesbian tell me that she was so sorry when she heard that I had chest surgery.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was such a beautiful person and being, and she was sorry they were losing me.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, losing me? And she was like, well, yeah, you don't. A, I've never said I stopped identifying as a lesbian. B, I've always identified politically as a lesbian. I've never. That's the only way I've ever identified as a lesbian. If someone asks me if they're lesbian, I say I'm politically, yes, I am. I kind of can get down with the politics. It comes closest to what I think that I believe in, the most of what I believe in. But I've never said I was actually. That's your assumption. You didn't ask me any more questions about it, But like, it's been very curious. Women who will not talk to me now because I'm a man.
Yeah.
Right. And places that I'm not welcome anymore. Which, again, in theory, you're like, oh yeah, but you don't think that's really going to happen.
Right.
These are people that you've been around for, like for me, 15, 20. 25 years.
And people who have similar experiences of like feeling like they don't belong in certain spaces, for them to then other you, I'm sure is just...
They're telling me I don't, well, I belong, but this trans woman over here who says she's a lesbian, and has probably been a lesbian all her life, she doesn't belong. Why? Because of her body part? You all said the body parts are insignificant to the rest of what was going on. So what is happening now? Tell me what is happening here. And how is my socialization as a female body person not valid now because, in your words, I chopped off my tits and I'm putting chemicals that don't belong in my body in my body? It's been fascinating to tell you. It was fascinating when at The Ohio State University, I, at one point, was the director of ethnic student services. I went into that job from being the coordinator of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender student services, which did not have a T when I first got there. What I was going to say earlier is I decided to start using the T because Ohio State was not providing care or any kind of options for transgender students. And Matthew Shepard was killed. And so there was all this going on. And James Byrd is killed in Texas or Florida. This is a black man who gets dragged behind a truck. Everybody whispers about the fact that he was effeminate. Now, whatever else he was, who knows, he drank a lot, always was very nice to people, did stuff for people, but every night he drank a lot. And some haters took advantage of that. And at the same time, 3 black trans women were murdered within weeks of themselves in Cleveland. Nothing. It barely made the news. Barely made the news. But Matthew Shepard, the whole world stopped because this blonde, blue-eyed, cute little gay boy And I do not begrudge what happened to him or anything like that. But if you were going to do that for him, then the rest of them should have been up there right with it. And there was nothing. And it hurt my soul so much that I went and asked my supervisor why. For some reason, it made me ask why we did not have a T.
Yeah.
Why was it just gay, lesbian, bisexual student services? And she explained to me that it was because of the Board of Trustees saying there was no precedent for it. No student had come forward and asked, you know? And as for the other things, first it was the gay office and the lesbians, and then the bisexuals were like, yo. And so nobody had really asked. And so that's why. So the next day I was like, hey, I'm staff and I'm transgender.
Yeah.
And so what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about that?
Right.
And we had also at H.I.S. State, there was a lot of, what is that called? Impromptuing going. They were setting up stings in the restrooms and capturing, you know, gay men supposedly soliciting sex. And so that was happening as well. A couple cross-dressers, they say, were caught in the men's restroom. And so just all of these things are happening at once. And I'm like, well, what can I do? What can I do? And so that is why, you know, I was like, okay, well, I'm transgender.
Right. And that's like when they say there's no precedent for it, or like no one has asked, probably because they didn't feel comfortable.
Exactly.
That letter wasn't there. And so then by you saying that, I'm sure like there certainly had been trans.
Exactly. Oh.
It's not like you were the first trans person.
There were trans.
Yeah.
There were trans people that were professors and whatnot, just not, no one out like that. Nobody's saying me,
right?
You know, and but you know, some of the backlash from that, from the gay community, when there starts being articles, because I really started being more active then, and really pushing. You know, now we have the LGBT Alumni Association. There's the National Day of National Coming Out Day. That whole thing was not there before. Like somehow it motivated me to try and work with folks to get these things in place.
Yeah.
We had never marched in homecoming. We had never in the homecoming parade. And, you know, because we'll tell each other these narratives, they don't want us there, so we don't go. It's going to be scary, so we don't go. But what about that one person that's made their way here and they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Yeah. What does it mean? They may never come up to you, but what does it mean in the homecoming parade for them to see the Office of Ethnic Student Services, to see the Office of Student Gender and Sexuality Services? What does that mean for them to see that? And so that's where like this visibility thing starts like coming in. But the backlash that I got from the gay community, as people would read and be like, you're transgender? When did that happen?
When did that happen?
Have you been looking at me?
Right.
I mean, like, do you hear me? I've always said that I would take the shot. I just am deathly afraid of needles. And so I never took the shot, you know? I've since changed my mind about that. And it's still just as traumatic as it would have been then. But it's like all that kind of overlapping. And I guess that's how every time I try to leave here, something brings me back. Yeah. You know, I did leave for a few years in the 80s. But here I am back. And so it's home base.
Wow. Yeah, you've shared so many things about like, you know, your experience and, you know, because some of the struggles and just like lack of acceptance in spaces where you had always felt comfortable. And I think for a lot of like young queer folks, young queer trans folks, young trans folks of color, queer people of color, like they're experiencing that still all these years later too. You know, we may have the T in front of the center, but it doesn't mean that there's any more acceptance as we know from legislation, as we know from everything we're hearing in the news. So as somebody who's gone through all this, who's still living and like experiencing like your identity as you move through the world, like what advice would you give to like young queer trans people of color about like, you know, carrying on despite what other people want to project on them?
I mean, that's it, period, right? It's like, one thing I would say is like you really need to figure out some mindfulness that you can do for yourself to center yourself. And that voice inside, I believe people's voices inside say that they're enough and that they are perfect how they are. It's to remember to listen to that and to realize the rest of it is the joke that everyone's trying to put on you, and it is your light and your power that they're afraid of, and you are born with that. You're born with it, and I feel like life is trying to keep that from getting snuffed out.
And why do you think that is?
Trying to snuff it out? Because folks think they want power to make the world go right. And so and they think that they need the numbers. They don't understand that. So I'm a religious person, okay? And there's a story in the Bible about after Jesus is killed, that his disciples are together and someone comes to tell them, Mary comes to tell them that Jesus is alive, and then shortly after that this is announced in this marketplace where people are coming to do their taxes, and every word that the disciples they're told to go out and talk, and suddenly they can speak all the different languages, even though the people are different. I, in my mind, believe that people think that if they can control everything that you're doing, that they'll have that kind of power. That they don't see that it's just like, you know, some of the things that I saw with the Black Lives Matter is that people wanted change. They wanted exchange, not change. I think it's about that people think that because you can't totally get away without some intentional, conscious work from those narratives, those records that have been playing that you're socialized. It's hard to get away from those. And we're tricked into believing that if we can get everybody to act this way at this time, well, it's not a trick. If you can rule them. That is why when you see conquering nations, what's the first thing they'll do? They'll take away the language. Instead of try to learn the language, they'll take away the language and say, no, you have to do this language. They'll take away your rituals. They'll take away your clothes. They'll strip you of everything to get your power. And so I think that's why it is that we've somehow lost the value of, you know, like you'll see parents being so embarrassed because their child's acting a certain way and their child's just being a child and they'll try to force them to, you know, to do this thing, and it's like, why? Because it's embarrassing of you?
Right.
Because it says something about you? What does it say about you?
Right.
About you, and why do we believe that? But our whole world is set on this precedent of this power, and it's our job, I feel like it's my job, to remind folks, no, you don't have, no, you don't. You believe yourself. I probably would have gone earlier if I could have just trusted and believed myself that my instinct is good, you know? Like, you know, even when you're doing something crooked, you know you're doing something crooked. You know it.
Right,
If you're really brutally honest with yourself, you know you're making a choice that may not end up well, and that you have made a decision to go ahead and try that. That is how it is, period. I'm like, don't believe the hype. Don't believe whenever they're like, oh, the majority of people. That's not true. Somebody is lying to you about that. If you can, it is true if you can dream it. You can make it happen. Now, it might not happen in all the ways. Like I always ask to be relevant. I wanted to be relevant. I wanted to be, if I die, I wanted to have what I did in my life have really been relevant to the positivity of someone else, of the people around me's life. I thought that was going to be in more of a, I don't know, on Broadway, something like that. Not in the way that I am. I wouldn't have imagined actually, that a national award would be something that I would be getting in my 60s. I would have imagined that might have happened in my 20s or 30s, and because it didn't, that I wasn't successful, or I don't remember like having that conscious thought, but I definitely, it's also this thing that your life is over after 30 or 35 or 40. Like there's this idea and this thing that gets sold. And I see a lot of my friends, I'm like, so what? Or I'm 60, I can't. What's that got to do?
Right.
Okay, bye. I'm going to be over here, but we believe that there's only a limited time for us to get done whatever we need to get done. And if not, then you need to just fall into this pattern of what the world says is success. I've just changed my job at 61 years of age. I cannot tell you how people think I'm insane, and why would I do that? I'm like, because I want to be happy. I want to feel joy. I want to give joy. I don't want the joy I give to be bitter, because 8 hours of my day are spent in a place I don't want it to be. And so it's that kind of thing to remember that there is life. Like this is only right now. This is only right now. And more often than not, it really is your choice. You really do have the power. That's what I would say. You really do have the power. You really do. And you are going to grow out of things. You can think of your parents, the people around you, kind of like Chrysalis. You got to get out of that, right? And you're not going to look like that before, and you're not going to have any of that shell stuff. And maybe some of it will come with you, and maybe it won't. I was estranged from my parents. I don't know if they would call it that, but I would call it that for several years. I mean, I showed up maybe as a shell of myself. It is just now that I am showing up as my full self. And don't be like that. Don't sit around. Part of my emergence is because I did not want my parents to die. It suddenly occurred to me that my parents were going to die and not know me, not really know me. And I didn't want to have that. It was selfish. I just didn't want that burden on me. But the thing is, it's always less scarier when you do it than you've already imagined everything that's going to happen. So if it does, so do this. You think it's going to be that terrible, then figure out what you're going to do if it's that terrible. That's the thing. Don't sit around and be, oh, well, they'll hate me and they'll put me out. Okay, maybe they will hate you and put you out. Figure out, what will you do then? What will you do instead of sitting there worrying about that? The thing is, get your own answer. Figure out, what will you do? All right, they're going to put me out. What will I do? And try to get prepared. Oh, this person might say this. Like, I wouldn't go to my family reunions because I thought someone was going to say something. I finally got in my head and I started practicing, and I do that a lot. If I think I'm going to run into some kind of animosity or whatever, I practice what my response is going to be. I try to think of shocking things to be said to me so that I can be prepared, because that's how you get caught off guard. Does it suck to have to do that? Well, as marginalized people, that's what we have to do. And it can suck, but still. So, when a cousin came up and said, oh my God, I heard you were gay. My response was, you're just now hearing that?
Right.
That is old news. Yeah.
Make them feel bad.
Yeah. Even just, okay. Well, is there something else you wanted to say about that?
Right.
I mean, I had someone come up at my brother's 50th, 60th birthday party, or his retirement party, and say, oh my God, so, I saw you're like a transgender. And my partner's daughter is just now saying that she's like one of you. And, and I'm just like, so I had prepared in some ways for this type of thing. And I was like, first of all, we're at a party. And I don't want to talk about this right now.
Right, we're here to celebrate the retirement.
And there's two things. I don't mind to talk to you about it. And here is one place I can send you, for them. And that's that. But you have to, because people will try to do that. They'll try to take your power by saying something mean, Someone's like, just, oh, I didn't know you're a bulldagger. I didn't know people still use that word.
Yeah.
Like to be able to say that and to just, in some ways, maybe expect it, like not be so shocked. We see that that's what's supposed to happen. Our movies play it up, even like the good gay ones still play on the stereotypes and the negativity of the stereotypes, right? Just reinforcing. I'm like, why you have to do it like that?
Yeah.
Like that, why is that the only version of that? Why is it? Or you got to be a good, meaning, acting queer.
Right, palatable.
Yeah, palatable.
Yeah.
The favorite uncle or aunt, and
the
just like
best friend.
yeah.
Tropes,
All of that, right?
Right.
So that's what I would say. Like, it really is. That's why it seems so hard, because the simple answer is you really do need to believe yourself about you. And if you are saying anything to yourself other than, I'm awesome and I can do this, then get to that mindfulness, get to tearing up those records that are playing so that you just don't accept it. I mean, I've been a lucky enough person that I never accepted all the crap people say when they say they're Christians or church. I've been like, I don't know what Bible you're looking at. I don't know what you're reading. I don't understand. The thing is love everybody, and this is not love. So you're just trying to be God, and I'll be like, Jesus, you need to get your people together because they're out here telling lies on you, And that is like how I just like not accepting anything outside. Well, I guess it'll just be me and God then, because the rest of you, I guess I'm just not going to come in here. I'm going to have church at my house. Ask people questions. I'll tell you, the older gays, we're out here. We don't mind a question. At least I don't. It's to like really the relationships are the most important thing that you need. You need the relationships, and you need relationships that feed you.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you get stuck with sucky caretakers, but there are people on the outside. One of the things that I learned, I went through my pregnancy and all of that pretty alone. And what I didn't realize then is that there were all these people just waiting, because we'll do that too. I don't know if it's just a Midwestern thing, but we'll do that. We'll see somebody looks like they need help, but we will not say anything. We'll be like, even though we know how hard it is when we need help to ask for it, we will not say, hey, you good? Like, I mean, really, are you good? Because your energy seems to just do that. But I was surrounded by people waiting for me to lift up my head and look for something more than the dirt on the ground. And so, it's that too. You got to lift your head up. You cannot stay with your head down. You can't stay hidden it behind a computer screen in your bedroom, living your life. You got to get out and have relationships. And that's how, and like create your world. You want a bunch of people who, I don't know what. You want a bunch of people who like to go to the park and just stare at the squirrels, then reach out and do it.
Right. Yeah, there's a group for everybody.
But it really is that. Like, I can't tell you how I can't really say where the resiliency, because I do recognize it as a resiliency. And sometimes I just remind myself that as bad as it is, there is worse.
Yeah.
As bad as it is, there is work. I got to take a deep breath and figure out what I need to do. What I need to do. I think that our society really makes us helpless, always making all these decisions for us, telling us what we can or cannot do, or how we should be able to do something. We got to ban things because, you know, like it doesn't even, because you can't handle it. You know, well, I could not read whatever. I could like just simply not read it. How about that?
Right.
You know, but why are you telling me that? Why are you telling me? I mean, I appreciate not going. In Las Vegas, they allow indoor smoking. I appreciate that there is not. I don't necessarily, I feel like, can't y'all just make the decisions about banning? Why is it got to be a whole rule that now people got to go to jail? Like, it's just the simplest stuff. Just, it's like we can't think for ourselves.
Right.
And before we go to think, we got to check and see what the most popular answer is, because that's what you're going to do.
Right.
You're going to do that even if it goes against what you feel. It's like, well, what's everybody else doing? Because I don't want to like be standing alone.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
Let's say get comfortable with alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard to be alone.
Well,
Yes, I'm a Pisces. It's really hard to be alone.
And you're over here like, what?
I feel
No,
seen, yeah.
no, I cannot.
well, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories and for imparting this wisdom on young folks. I know that if I was like, you know, even just a few years ago, hearing this would have really changed things for me too. So if there are any young folks listening who want to get to know you more, like, is there any way that they could reach out? And
Well, I'm trying to work on that currently, but I do have a Facebook. I do have a Facebook and I do have an Instagram. And what I'll say is, if you reach out to me, you know this, I will try to answer, but you probably just need to follow back up. I try to get around to things no more than 2 or 3 days after they get to me, but you know, maybe I'm going to be able to afford a PA sometime soon, and I'll get better at it.
Right,
But
right.
you know, just look me up there. I'm always willing to come and talk to folks and things like that, and be available. So yeah, they could just reach out to me. Got a couple projects in the works that I'm hopefully going to be doing here soon. One might look like a new drag troupe.
oh, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
And the other is probably going to be, well, it's not probably going to be, it's going to be some kind of praise, faith and praise show of sorts.
Nice.
Oh my goodness. That's exciting.
So it is going to include like praise and worship songs and gender expression.
Oh.
And so
I love that you're teasing this on our podcast.
thank
This is
you.
great.
That's what
Let's follow up when that happens.
that's
I
what
look
I'm
forward to
thinking
it.
about doing, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule, out of your life, to be here on Speaking Queerly. We really appreciate it, and
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of Speaking Queerly. If you have any suggestions for future topics, or if you have any questions you'd like us to answer on future episodes, please send an email to mallory@kycohio.org, and we'll do our best to fulfill that request. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and share this episode with a friend so they can be part of the conversation too. You can also follow us on all social media platforms platforms at KYC Ohio. And if you like what you heard so far on Speaking Queerly, please visit kycohio.org/donate. You can make a one-time donation, or you could join our Unity Circle. Your contributions will help KYC continue to serve LGBTQIA+ youth through programming, community-based wellness, and behavioral health supports, or through educational tools and trainings like this podcast. So other ways you can get involved.
Get involved.
Until then, we'll see you next time. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.